What's going on, guys? We're here. We're live. Welcome to a brand new Poker Live podcast. My name is Sean Grimone, aka Chicago Joey, coming to you on location. We're here in Laguna Beach. My view, I'm at a place on the beach. I'm looking at people surfing right now and falling. And this might be one of the most fun sceneries I've ever had for a podcast. So I'm very fucking excited for this one. Guys, joining me today on the pod is a young gentleman who wrote a piece. And he's fucking angry. He's mad. He thinks that the marketplace in the poker world, that the markup, the tournaments, how it all works, he thinks it's fucked up, it's broken. And he's here to talk more about why it's broken. He's here to talk, maybe bring some solutions to the table. I'm here personally to learn more about it. And we might get some guests in here. What's up? Oh, really? Oh, well, this ain't going to be good. Yeah, this ain't going to be ideal then, huh? We got to relocate, puppy. It's okay. Andrew, this never happened before. Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Oh my God, what a mess!
I know it's live, kid. You know, yeah. we can edit this back. I'm gonna edit this out, and then we'll put it on there. So
we'll roll with the channel. We'll roll with it.
We're gonna keep rolling, though, man. Welcome to the pod. We'll do it in transit, man. It's okay. We gotta make this work.
All right.
No problem, man. So what's going on, man?
Yeah. So this is something I've cared about for a few years now. When I was first getting into poker, I went to a conference held at the Bellagio, put on by Brandon.
That worked pretty well. Got to go back down in here.
I'm gonna have to rehash this, I think.
They kicked me out, guys. All right, Andrew, I'm back in my They got a party coming up there. Now we're live. It was bad technical difficulties. I know, right? It's crazy, man. I can't believe they're partying. All right, Andrew.
All right.
So go ahead. I can hear you.
Yeah. So this is something I've cared about for a few years now. When I was getting into poker, like 2009, 2010, I attended a conference held at the Bellagio during the World Series. Brandon Adams organized it. And Timex was there. Phil Galfond was there. Nate Silver was there. And Nate Silver was the keynote speaker. And this was when Bank of Timex had just started. And Mike realized that like a bunch of people were fleecing investors, that everyone was overcharging. And he was like, well, shit, I'm going to make some money on this. Because that's kind of how Timex thinks about things, is how can I profit off of it? And he started shorting everybody. And I mean, I think publicly he's not doing this anymore, but I'm pretty sure it's still going on. Behind
it's all legend, right? We don't know. I can't comment. I don't know for sure.
Exactly. I was like, can I go off the record? I can't go off the record, but he's definitely. I think there's still opportunities. We'll say that there's still opportunities to short players, but he recognized it was a problem, and he and I started discussing this, and kind of tried to analyze the situation and figure out some solutions. It was really cool to hear Galfond talk about it, because I found out that he actually sells to his friends at par. And so clearly it's not something that everyone's doing. He actually told me that there's really like two approaches that people use. There's like the German approach, and I'm going by what he said. This may not be true of all Germans, so I feel bad if I generalize. But he said that the Germans tend to charge really high markup to one another, and then like the Finns all charge each other par. And that's just kind of like this mutual agreement that they've all decided upon. Like, we're not going to, try to crush each other. And the problem with when you sell to a group of people and everybody charges each other markup, you just ramp up everybody's variance. I mean, that's pretty much what's going on. Because, let's say you have like a 50 buy-in downswing. If each person has a 50 buy-in downswing and it's multiplied by 1.25, then your downswing has just gotten 25% bigger. So I mean, you're really not doing anyone any favors in terms of variance. And I think like professional poker players tend to try to avoid variance whenever possible. But in this system, it's actually increasing the variance dramatically, which is just like one of like many problems with the system.
Okay, so B in the chat says, what exactly does it mean to short players?
Yeah, so like the way the stock market works, and like that's a great segue to, people always say, oh, it's a free market, whatever price people want to pay, that's the fair price. The market will bear, yada, yada. The problem is that the tournament marketplace isn't like the stock market in that you don't have people on both sides. So that's what Timex was doing, is he was basically taking the other side. So when you buy a share, you think that the share is appropriately priced or it's priced too low. If you're selling the share, if you're shorting it, it's kind of like you're betting against it being appropriately priced. You think it's too high. In a stock market, those kind of even out, and that's what sets the price of stocks. But in the marketplace, you don't have that. You only have it's one-sided. So you don't actually have a true market going on.
So basically, what you're saying is you wrote this piece, and your goal of the piece is to try to maybe educate people and get them more informed, or try to balance the marketplace out, or do you think you can possibly have some sort of impact on what the marketplace currently is?
I mean, I hope I can have some impact, but yeah, I mean, you hit upon a couple good points. One, education is huge. If you can tell people that they're buying a product that isn't great, that's overpriced, that hopefully that will drive demand down, and you start seeing fewer packages, and that's what happened on 2+2 in the last couple of years. 2+2 used to be the place to go if you wanted to sell stuff for a really high price and people would buy it. And now 2+2's wisened up, and now this stuff is a little more, it's a little cheaper. And now all the shitty packages have gone to U-Stake. And now U-Stake is where people are peddling like the total crap that nobody wants to buy.
Right.
The Jamie Gold packages that are selling at 1.66.
Well, I guess we can kind of get into that thing, the whole U-Stake concept, the Stake Kings, Poker Link. I think that's what it used to be, and the marketplace stuff too. So
there's the education aspect, and then I'd like to just try to have a dialogue, in the community about, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to screw people over? Are we trying to make as much money off of investors as possible and leave them nothing?
Right.
There should be a fair split between investors and players, because ultimately, a lot of these guys that are firing these 1,500s and 5Ks and 10Ks, they couldn't play them without those investors. So they should be thankful as shit, that people are going to give them money and help them play these tournaments that could be life changing. I mean, my bink last summer, it was totally due to my investors, and I was so appreciative. And these guys, they think it's totally standard to just take the money and run, and it's become such a money grab. Because not everyone, a lot of poker players are realizing you can make a lot of money selling at markup. You can make a living off it if you do it right.
So, Andrew, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, about your background in poker, about your background as an economist, I believe, according to the blog post you wrote, which I don't actually know what an economist means. So, why don't you tell people a little bit about exactly what that means?
I'm trying to figure it out, Poppy. I'm learning as I go, but. Yeah, so I've been playing poker for a living since the financial crisis of 2008. I got laid off, and I was like, "Fuck this! I don't want to work for anyone. I want to, work for myself." So I kind of gave it a shot, dove in, and grinded up from micros, live and online. I started in sit and goes, got into multi-table tournaments after that, some live cash, got into some mixed stuff where that's where I really had success, is in the mixed arena. I find it really intellectually stimulating. And then after Black Friday, I was thinking that this might not be the way to make a living for much longer. So I registered for classes a couple months after Black Friday. And I did a master's in Sacramento, where I was living for the last 8 years, and then used that to get into a PhD program in Santa Cruz, beautiful Santa Cruz. And yeah, so I'm in my first year of that. I'm finishing up right now, and then I'm driving down to Vegas tomorrow for this meeting.
I'm trying to, guys in the chat, there's something in the chat that says, please can you turn your TV off? So we're live here, guys. We're on location in Laguna Beach. We're on the beach right now, and we had a room planned out, and then they kicked me out of the room as the podcast started, literally. So now we're here. We're with Tatiana. She just got done doing commentary for the Super High Roller Bowl.
Sideline reporting.
Sideline reporting. And we're probably podcasting later tonight, and I assume we won't be drinking because it's already 3 p.m. We're drinking. I'm with my boy. Who busted super high roller ball, and now he's here commiserating and his sadness with us. And we're on the water right now. Want to shout the dog? Is the dog here? Okay, the dog's down.
She's being a good girl, right here.
Grizzly's down here, but we're on location right now, so yeah. So we're doing this on location, and we're gonna make this fun. It's gonna be fun. Thank you. They say I'm sunburned. Andrew's got a good look at Andrew's got a GTO look. I'm trying to get this look. You see, I like his look. The goatee. I can't even grow a fucking goatee. It's so sick. I can only grow half the facial hair. So
give it a try this summer.
What do you say? What do you say, Andrew?
You should try one this summer. Grow it out this summer.
I'm trying, buddy, but look at this. This side doesn't grow, and this side does. So it's a little problem for me. My hair's the top hair. Yeah, the top hair. It's still blue, guys. Don't worry in the chat.
No,
all right, so
it's on point.
All right, guys. So you know a little bit more about Andrew. If you haven't read his post, he posted it in one of the most inoptimal places of all time on Google, on his Google Drive. So you can't really find it unless you know Andrew or you read the retweet, because I retweeted it. I think maybe 20 people retweeted it. So since you put that out, what has been the feedback from people in terms of what they said, in terms of ideas, or if they agree with you or disagree with you?
So it's been kind of all over the map. So first of all, I realized how not GTO it was, because I had a few journalist friends who were like, dude, this is too good to be giving it away for free. You should be selling this shit. And right. I was like, well, it's not really about the money. Like I really care about doing what's right and educating people and kind of just getting, I mean, I guess that's like the academic in me. I feel like this is information that should be free and accessible, but maybe it wasn't the most accessible possible. So yeah, I got some feedback from them. I had a couple requests from interviews from like the non-poker media, freelancers from Slate and The Atlantic, who were trying to find a way to talk about, I guess, selling action has been something that the mainstream media wants to cover ever since the one drop, which I think got a lot of light shown on that. Like Wall Street Journal and Forbes, I think, for the very first one drop, when they were talking about how Negreanu sold his action and Mike Sexton sold his action, and like the deals they had, the different deals they had. And then within the poker playing community, I get a lot of shit. I mean, I get a lot of pushback because I think people think I'm painting with a broad brush and saying like every poker player is crooked, and they're all trying to scam investors, and that I make it harder for people to sell because I'm making investors think more critically about the packages. And I'm at the end of the day, like, I'm sorry if my friends make a little bit less money, but I think ultimately this is going to be better for poker long term if this is a change that we can put into play.
I definitely can understand that. I'm sure most people that would be upset. Well, a lot of people are probably making a lot of money at Markup. Think about it, over a long period of time, if they sell a bunch of packages, if now they have to go from 1.3 to 1.2 or 1.15 because of maybe investors becoming smarter, when you really think about it, that's a lot of potential money that people are now, like, that's, it's sick. That's how, it's fucking so sick. That's how tournament players are profiting. They're profiting from this markup. And I can understand some people being upset about this, but at the same time, I can understand smarter people who understand things maybe a little bit differently or better, wanting to voice their opinion about this. So, and you mentioned some mainstream media sites got in touch with you. Have you talked with any of them about potentially releasing this subject out to people and talking more about it on a mainstream area?
Yeah, I mean, you're probably aware, like there's an issue with trying to get poker into the mainstream because it's such a niche subject. Like it's not accessible to the general public. I think the poker boom is seen as having faded. So there's not like that interest that was there, a few years ago. So I think what they're trying to tie it to, which I think is super interesting, is they're relating it to like Kickstarter or GoFundMe, which is kind of having the same problem that the poker marketplace has, which is people are really fishy and they'll buy stupid shit, and then they're upset when it's not what they were promised. So you have a company like a startup that issues, like a product on Kickstarter, and then they don't meet the deadlines or something, or they go belly up, and the investors are like, oh man, I'm so disappointed. It's like, well, you shouldn't be funding projects that are, have no financial backing, or no proof of working. So, I mean, that's the angle. I think it's a good angle to use, because Kickstarter is another problem. I think people piss away a lot of money on Kickstarter.
So, okay, so I guess from a poker perspective, if you could send one message to people out there, the investors, what would you send them to make them real? I mean, because it's like, I think the most argument is that people want to gamble. They want to,
right.
Like, if that's what people will pay, then that's what people should sell for. Whereas if people aren't going to buy, then the market will adjust and people will sell for lower. But if they can sell for this price, why wouldn't they sell for this price? I think that's probably one of the arguments that I've heard from most people.
Right. Yeah, that's a super common argument, and I appreciate people wanting to have a sweat. The problem I have with the sweat is that the incentives are fucked, in that the player and the investor have very different sweats. The investor is getting way the worst of it with markup, and as markup goes up, or as the player sells more, the investor is just getting screwed more and more. So one of the issues I have is, like, let's have a sweat, but let's have both sides having the same sweat. So that's I guess that would be like my primary response is, I have no problem with people wanting to gamble, wanting to have, like, there's some utility in investing in a player or a friend of yours. You want to be along for the ride, you want to be on the rail, but the player's taking advantage of the situation. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, they're taking advantage of the situation. They're getting way the best of it. So I've got you were joking earlier about how the math was complicated. But,
they're gonna have a hard time. They're gonna have a hard time understanding it if it's only in spoken form. I'm guarantee that.
Yeah, but so I had this fictitious example of 15 events is like a normal summer package, and you have maybe 20K worth of events, and if you sell half of it at 1.2, the investors are paying 12K, the player's paying 8K, so the player has a mark down of 0.8. So the player doesn't even have to break even. They just have to do better than losing 20%, like having a negative 20% ROI. And then it only gets worse as they sell more. If you sell 70%, you can have an ROI of negative 40% and make money. That's fucking terrible. I mean, that's there's a huge divergence between what the investor's sweating and what the player's sweating.
Well, I think you just lost half of the viewers watching right now, because there's absolutely no fucking chance they understood what you just said in terms of the math. I mean, they're like, I don't know what the fuck this motherfucker just said. And I think that might be a thing that most people aren't really, most people probably maybe they're aware of it, but they just don't care. They want to gamble. They want to buy pieces. They want to, and as long as those people exist, it doesn't seem like the marketplace, as long as it's like Jamie Gold selling for 1.6 to people who don't even know what poker means. They just know Jamie Gold won the main event 55 years ago. So it's
right.
how can we really, what steps can we actually take realistically to start changing this? What can we do today to help maybe rectify the situation?
Sure. So there's a couple fixes. Let me get my notes here. I want to be organized since I'm trying to make a case. So I think one immediate solution is, when you sell action during the summer and you buy action during the summer, you have choices in who you buy from and who you sell to. And I think one immediate fix is only buy from people who are selling at reasonable markup, and only sell to people who are selling at reasonable markup. So that's something that me and my friends are trying to do this year. We've kind of compiled our backing funds into one, and we're looking for people who are charging what I think is fair markup. And when I have people who offer me packages that are, I think, priced unfairly, I let them know it. I let them know that I think that they would be better served, selling at lower markup. And if you're giving up a little bit of EV, fine, whatever. I think that any poker player that tries to squeeze every dollar out of every situation is going to be leaving the poker world worse than they found it. You know, I know, like, I'm sure you've seen the situation playing cash, you know, when like the whale gets up from the table and the table snap breaks. Like, the consensus there is like, this is really terrible. And even whether the whale sees it or not is not the issue. It's like, let's try to preserve the integrity of the game by like playing, you know, a couple orbits or something, and make it, you know, less obvious what's going on here, which is that we're all playing to you know, poach this whale. So
I mean, but okay, so from that exactly what you just said, it doesn't seem like that's going to change. That's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And as much as we may try to advocate for that specific dynamic to change, it's not going to change. So therefore, maybe if this is similar, maybe this isn't. Maybe like we're sort of fighting a losing battle. Meaning, if what we hope for is to have a, I guess, quote unquote, more fair marketplace, maybe it's just unrealistic. Maybe there's no way it can take place with how things are right now.
Well, I mean, I see a group. I mean, I guess I don't want to. It's hard to come up with names right now. I probably should have written a list, but I see a group of poker players that I really respect that are selling at what I consider fair markups, and then I see another group that's clearly trying to get every last dollar out of their investors. So any guy that ever auctions his action is pretty scummy in my opinion, because that's like the way that guarantees that the person who wins overpays. I mean, I even alluded to it in the article that, you know, it's referred to as the winner's curse. If you have an auction for something where nobody knows what it's worth, the winner is going to overpay. And that was like a trend a couple years ago on 2+2. Everyone thought it was such a great fucking idea because it led to investors paying out the nose, and it probably contributed to 2+2 losing. You know, I mean, there's estimates that 2+2 has stuck millions staking, which if anything reveals that the prices for action are just too high. So I mean, and then that probably returns us back to the argument of, you know, people like to pay for sweats. But I think that if poker players are trying to say that their price, that everyone's pricing their markup appropriately, then why is 2+2 stuck so damn much?
No, I guess it's just reading some of the comments here and listening to more about it. Yeah, I guess.
You look skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand, but then, you know, I was talking to Jason about this before the podcast started, and we were talking about, it's very similar in I guess in every other industry. It's very similar. We were talking about real estate, for example, and when people invest in a certain piece of real estate, they're going to charge a markup, and that's just one correlation, and it probably correlates to many other industries as well, where if people are going to buy something and it's available to sell at markup, it's just going to happen. And I don't necessarily think now, like 7 years into things, 8 years into things, we can really do much to actually change that. Even if you show them these numbers and show them exactly what the difference is, I think it's just going to be too hard to really. Maybe some smart people you'll be able to make an impact on, but I think a lot of people, it's just going to fall on deaf ears, and they're going to continue to invest because they're just gamblers. They're degens. They want to gamble. They want to play the lotto.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I think the issue with this particular industry is that, like, if you're buying, you know, a good or a service or a home or something, that value is way more certain. And, you know, if you go to the store, all right, and say you want to buy some, you know, some hair dye, and, you know, you want to dye your hair, there's a level of trust that the price you're being charged is the appropriate price for that product. You know, I mean, and you know, we don't know like the costs that go into that. You know, we don't know what the competitors necessarily charge. There's a level of trust that goes into purchasing a product, and you know, whether it's, you know, whatever the product may be or the service may be. And I think there's a level of trust that investors have in players, because not many people understand this industry, and poker players can take advantage of that by charging a price that they know they'll make money, and they just have to convince the investor that it's fair, you know, that it's standard, you know, and the markups that people are charging now are the same markups that were charged 5 years ago, and nobody's trying to tell anyone that poker is as easy as it was 5 years ago. So I guess it's intentionally misleading in that regard.
Huh. So I definitely see, I understand where you're coming from, and I definitely agree in a perfect world where you're coming from too. But so I guess the point of the podcast is we want to educate people out there on the subject. We want to let them know exactly. And you mentioned something interesting in the blog, I believe, which was about over packages, or when they're selling for individual tournaments. Maybe some players they're disincentivized to maintain a short stack because they may have a tournament the next day that they want to play. So they're not really putting their all into a certain situation because they realize, oh, I got another tournament tomorrow, and they're charging markup on that package. And then investors are sort of getting hosed on some situations like that because they're more incented to bust, or instead of grinding the short stack into day two.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I can get some tips. I mean, if I can't convince people that the system is fucked, then at the very least, I want to offer some tips to people who are buying. So one tip that relates to that is don't buy people who have packages that include events that are back to back to back to back to back. Like, look for people who are selling some value events that are spread out by a few days. That they're not going to go insane during the summer. They're not going to have perverse incentives to try to bust a stack so they can fire the next day. If you have imagine you were playing maybe one of the famous tournaments, it's $600, and then the next day you have a $1,500 on your schedule, and you have a short stack in the $600 tournament. Absolutely, you should punt that stack and fire the $1,500 the next day. And anyone who's not thinking about that just isn't a smart poker player. So.
If you had some other tips to give to people, because I think that's a really great tip, is to look for packages that are more spaced out rather than someone who, and I never thought about this. So I don't buy packages, I don't buy pieces. At Markup especially, I think I've sold all my friends if I ever play something at face. But
nice.
Give some other tips to people out there that
awesome.
Yeah, listen, I'm not I'm not a fucking tournament player also, so I'm not gonna charge my friends 1.2. So the idea of markup, to me, I understand why it exists. I understand you want to pay for your hotel, you want to pay for that stuff, but I'm not with it. But I understand why it exists.
But that is, I want to get back to the tips, but people who, this is a huge myth I want to dispel, that people who say, oh, I need to charge markup to cover my, my travel expenses or whatever, my food, whatever it is, that is not a good justification for markup, because in theory, what the markup is supposed to be is it's a premium on someone who's supposed to return money. You're paying in theory, you pay 1.2 on a guy who's going to make, have an ROI of 40% or something like that. So whenever I hear people say, oh, I'm charging markup because I want to cover my costs, never going to give that person money, ever. That's the worst justification. A good justification for markup is, I know this field really well. I have a really good estimate of what my ROI is. I've had success versus these players before. I have all these people. I have all these references. I think most savvy backers are only backing people with tons of online experience, since online players are so much better than live-only players. So some other rules of thumb, people with online backgrounds, people who have I think been deep in tournaments before, who who are familiar with that. They're not going to cave under the pressure. They're not going to react poorly. They're not going to try to ladder up, when they're min cashing or something like that. Let's see here. What else? I guess there's some rough rules of thumb for markup, but what people get stuck on are these numbers that really don't have meaning by themselves, but rather they're they should be compared to the type of tournament you're playing. So for example, the main event, you can mark that up to high heaven and still sell, because that's a unique tournament. That tournament's amazing, and every professional's ROI should be much, much higher in that tournament. But people balk at paying 1.5 in that, but they'll happily pay 1.2 for a midweek hold'em, and that's just lighting it on fire. You should buy a good player at 1.5 in the main event way before you buy a good player at 1.2 midweek hold'em.
Epic Pyramid says he's giving some good tips how to swindle investors. That makes sense. I guess if you're an investor, if you're someone selling a package out there, now you're kind of getting some ideas on how to make more money from the people that you're selling packages to.
Yeah, I guess it's did you go through Dare as a kid? the anti-drug program. You ever heard of this before?
What do you say, Andrew?
DARE, D-A-R-E.
Yeah, of course. I dared and stay off drugs back in the day. Of course I did that, yeah.
So they got rid of the DARE program in schools. I grew up in Illinois. They got rid of the DARE program because rather than keeping kids off of drugs, it was teaching kids how to get drugs.
Yeah, I remember that back in the day that they were talking about that. And
no, I mean,
it definitely, well, it helped me though. It helped me stay off drugs.
Yeah. It's
for a while.
It's inevitable that if you point out the flaws in the system, you're going to teach people how to take advantage of the system. But hopefully, I mean, I was just about to say, hopefully there aren't that many shitty poker players that'll take advantage of this. But I know, having been in this game for a long time, just like you do, that there's a lot of scum out there.
There's definitely a lot of people who are, I mean, especially as poker becomes harder, they're looking for more and more ways to make money or get an edge or to be able to last in poker. And I feel like markup for a lot of tournament players is the way that they're lasting. I mean, you brought up a good point that markup shouldn't be to pay for food and boarding and all that stuff like that. But at the same time, I understand, because if you don't get markup, then how are you going to go? I mean, maybe there's some argument that you shouldn't be able to go travel to these places if the only way you can stay there and afford to live is if you have to charge the markup. Maybe if you're not good enough, maybe that you should already have something built up to that point. That I think that's certainly an argument to make.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you make a really good point that with poker getting harder, and I think that that's ultimately what motivated me, is I feel poker getting more difficult. I feel the pressure that's on a lot of pros who are struggling to survive. And I think this is like a last resort. I think that, I mean, I see a lot of people, I mean, the running joke in poker is that everybody has less money than you think they do. And I see a lot of people that are selling for a lot of small tournaments. So I can tell, I mean, it's kind of revealed that a lot of people are struggling. And I guess people see as perfectly substitutable, profiting from, fish at the table and profiting from fish investors. And I see a real problem with, equating those two.
All right, so if you had to give a couple more tips to people out there who are looking to invest in some packages this summer or in a tournament or in a solo off, what would you say to look for or recommend for people out there to avoid getting a bad deal?
Sure. Find people who are selling at par. I mean, I demand it as much as possible. When you're buying action, it's a negotiation. You don't have to you don't have to pay the price that's being asked. Explain why you want to pay less, that you're aware of these issues. I've had a lot of success explaining people where I'm coming from, and they will offer me a lower markup as a result. Buy larger packages, get together with friends and buy as a group, because players typically offer discounts to people who are buying large pieces because nobody wants to deal with 8 investors. They want to deal with 1 investor. So that's another way to get like a bulk discount, which, by the way, I mean, while I'm on the topic, is totally arbitrary. The fact that we charge a lower price for people who buy more, like, that makes no fucking sense. But everybody does it. So yeah, I mean, try to buy at par, but like probably don't buy anything that's over like 1.1 for the summer, with a few exceptions. Like Colossus, you can buy higher than 1.1. Millie Maker, you can buy higher than 1.1. Monster Stack, Main Event, obviously. I personally wouldn't touch the 1-drop because of like the extra rake, because it's raked and there's money going to charity. And I'm a very charitable guy, but I think that tournament should be treated differently. And then, yeah, the main you can be willing to pay a lot more for, and there's lots of good values to be found in the main. I bought my buddy Scott Abrams at 1.04 a few years ago, and he got 12th in the main. And then like this year, he's selling at 1.3. So it's hard you want to find people who haven't had huge scores yet, because as soon as they have those huge scores, they think they're worth a lot more. And I think that that's something that everybody falls victim to. So looking for people, I mean, it's tough because you want to find people that clearly have shown that they're good players, but you don't want to find someone who is trying to capitalize on scores they've had, like Jamie Gold.
So I think that was a lot of really good tips. Epic Pierce says, but couldn't you argue they're spending their time and energy to play these multi-table tournaments, therefore deserve at least a little bit of markup? Make sense?
I mean, yeah, I hear that argument, but you're effectively, it's charity at that point, right? I mean, you're giving them money to go have some fun, and you're paying their costs. And I think that, as my understanding of what peace buying is, it's an investment that's supposed to be profitable. And if I'm paying a premium that is covering your costs, that's completely unrelated to whether or not you're a profitable investment. So yeah, I mean, that's that. It doesn't. I hear that argument, and I think it's a rationalization of like a fee that players want to charge their investors so they can go travel around the world. But I don't think there's a lot of justification for it, and it feels a lot like charity.
I think that's a good explanation. I guess it's like charity, but I guess I just keep going back to when I think about all this. I think about, like, can it really change? Realistically, could things change? And I think we can educate some investors, but at the same time, there's just going to be so many people who, like, they know, like, think about it. People play poker, they know they can't win, they still play. And people are going to know they can't necessarily win in the long run by buying packages, but they're still going to do it. And if people are still buying, people are still going to keep selling. Therefore, the impact that this might have, or the education might have, is negligible, really.
Yeah, I mean, I totally appreciate that. I think that, you know, if you can't fix it from, like, the bottom up, if you can't fix it from the investors to the players, then I think you look at to fix it from the top down. And I mean, as a poker playing community, we need to have some people that are leading the charge to stop, you know, taking advantage of investors. And I think peer pressure does a lot. I mean, I think that the way that poker is self-policing, you know, if you have someone who is, you know, a scummy individual or an angle shooter, I think that those people tend to be handled by the poker community pretty well. I mean, you know, you recently had, was it Sean Deeb called out all the people that weren't making good on their loans, and I think that really helped make the poker community a better place. And there was some, you know, I think Sean, by his own admission, said, you know, he was probably going to go to the back of the line in terms of getting paid, but he knew that it benefited the poker community. So he was putting the poker community above his own bottom line. And I think that that's probably the best argument I can make for why we should take a look at how we sell action. Because while people might make a little bit less in the short term, in the long run, it would be really nice to be able to have plenty of liquidity for, like, forever, and have more success stories of people investing and making money.
That's a good point. Maybe there'll be some other people, other advocates, I guess, maybe the loud voices who are on Twitter or on 2+2, or I guess that's pretty much it now. Maybe some of those guys will also back up this. Maybe there'll be more discussion about it. I haven't seen much discussion about it. I guess since you put the article out, I haven't seen too many people really getting too deep into the issue. The usual loud voices in the room haven't been voicing many opinions. I'm sure that most of those people also sell their action at markup at a pretty high markup as well. Maybe they think that might hurt their own action. So you know, it'll be interesting, guys. So we are those guys that who torched my face. God damn, everyone said my face somewhere. Listen, guys, we're on a different webcam now. We're live on location. I was gambling when I did this, and I think I made a bad gamble for the first time in the history of the podcast, because there's loud fucking music in here. The room I was going to do it in was not I got kicked out of the room at the start of the podcast. And now I'm a little tilted for Andrew, and I'm a little tilted for myself that I decided under these conditions could be GTO or anywhere close to GTO, Andrew. So Andrew, I just want to say I do apologize to you, because I know we've been talking about doing this pod for a while.
Yeah.
And
no.
So these fucking, I'm keeping my tilt in right now. I got to be honest with you guys. I'm keeping it. I'm breathing. My breathing. My coach has been teaching me. I'm trying to have the water, but yeah, it's so loud. I want to have the discussion. So.
Hey, for what it's worth, you mentioned you know, you haven't heard from, like, the loud voices or, like, the high stakes guys. You know, from if liking tweets and retweets and comments here and there are any indication, I think a lot of the high stakes community feels the same way that I do. And it's the high stakes players that aren't, they're not gouging each other on markup. You know, I mean, like you said, you sell at par. Galfond is sold at par. I think a lot of guys that play the 10Ks sell at par. And if you think about it, selling a par and swapping are essentially the same thing. So it's not like the poker community is opposed to selling a par. We just do it a different way when we swap. And that's, I mean, I guess if that would be an argument for selling to your friends at par, is that it's like equivalent to swapping, but it's swapping like in an indirect fashion. You know, maybe I buy, you know, 10% of you in the 1500 PLO at par, and then you get 10% of me in like the, you know, 1500 horse or the 1500 08 or something like that. You know, essentially we did a swap, but they were in different events, and we're both the better for it.
I think that's a really great point, Andrew. Andrew, what are you doing, Andrew, in tomorrow afternoon on Saturday?
Are we gonna fire this up again?
we gotta run a part 2 back, because there's a lot more I want to discuss about this, and okay. I just, we're live, guys. It's never happened before in the history of the fucking podcast. 2.5 years we do this. Sometimes, you know, it's live. Technical difficulties happen, and I learned my lesson. I never do a on location podcast in this environment again, because I just I don't. It's not even that. I feel like I could keep doing it, but no one's in the room now. Everyone left me. But at the same time, I do want to give the proper respect to this topic. I believe this is an important topic. I believe the discussion is important. I believe this has the ability to save people a lot of money out there, and people watch the podcast. I want these people to be able to at least learn this information and get all the information from me, and I don't want to cut it short. So what do you think about part 2 this weekend, Andrew?
You know, I'm really glad I got this run bat out of the way before the series starts, because I think I'm gonna be in the clear after this. I'm driving down to Vegas tomorrow morning. I'll probably be in, it's like an 8-hour drive, so I'll probably be in, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 p.m., something like that. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that could work. Yeah, anytime tomorrow or Sunday early, we could do that too.
Well, I gotta start playing these tournaments, man. That's what people go to Vegas for, is the tournaments.
That's true. Okay, tomorrow night. Let's do it tomorrow night.
All right, booked.
All right, guys. Tomorrow night we're back with part 2. I guess it gives people 2 chances to tune in. Maybe this might be maybe I learned like some sort of GTO potential strategy for future podcasts, where you cut it up in 2. Maybe they come back at another time and it's shorter. Maybe they're more inclined to watch a shorter video. I'm not sure. Well, I guess this is like a indirect test and see what happens. So.
Yeah, maybe you tripped and fell into like the GTO strategy here. I think you need to give them like a teaser. So I'll give a teaser. I haven't described what I'm going to do this summer, but I think I have the nut fix for this situation.
Well, that's perfect then. What time we come back tomorrow? What time's good?
Let's say, I want to be realistic with how long it's going to take me to get down to Vegas. Let's say 6 p.m.
All right, 6 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow night.
Cool.
All right, guys. We'll be back tomorrow. I appreciate everyone who did tune in. Anyone that said something about my face is sunburned, I'm going to give you a permanent ban forever. And that's it, Andrew. I appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow, man.
No problem, bud. Talk to you then.
All right, guys. I'll talk with you soon. Peace out, guys, everybody.